I think there's a lot of companies who often struggle with how maybe CX is different from user experience, is different from market research. And I would say that they work together. Market research is excellent for solving specific problems, and that should be available to your customer experience team to say, well, how are these problems connected? How can we reuse this research in a way that's something new?
And welcome to a whole new episode of Engati CX. I'm your host, Cozzie, and we're really excited to have all of you join us today. On the show, we talk to CX and technology experts from around the world. We explore, uncover, and share fresh insights on creating experiences that your customers will remember and look forward to. Engati is the world's leading multilingual, no-code digital CX platform available across 15 channels with 53,000 solutions created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as the top platform by Inc. magazine, Tech World, CIO magazine, and many others. Engati recently also won the Cozzie 2021 award, being the best AI-driven technology solution. We run the Engati blog, the video channel, the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. And now let's welcome today's guest. We have Travis Cozzie with us today on the show. Travis Cozzie is the Vice President of Customer Experience Planning at Harrison and CX. He is also CX strategist and relentless problem solver. His passion is driven by the belief that empathy is the key to forming relationships and is the foundation for meaningful experience. Through a mix of technical knowledge, creative insight, and behavioral psychology principles, Travis has helped define and launch strategy and experiences for top Fortune 500 companies in the manufacturing, pharmaceutical, automotive, retail, banking industry. Welcome to the show, Travis. We're so glad to have you today with us on the show.
Thank you, Kimberly. Really excited to be here.
Likewise. Before we dive into an amazing interview with Travis, don't forget to subscribe to Engati so that you get access to exclusive content coming from thought leaders from around the globe. Well, Travis, in our bio, you've mentioned empathy being a very important feature here. What is this word in customer experience and how does it mean to you? Have you seen companies become more empathetic? Is that more like it?
Yeah, I mean, I truly believe that empathy is the foundation, and it's a word that does get used a lot, but often isn't practiced. And to me, the simplest definition is truly walking a mile in someone's shoes. Typically, organizations will do either some sort of like desk side or even market research where they're talking to customers. But to truly empathize, you almost have to experience it yourself. I'm a firm believer in ethnography, where you can, sit with a customer or a patient or a doctor and observe what they're doing, and also, almost a day in the life type exercises where you get to try it out. Because there's, mixing in user experience, it really takes someone to actively use an experience to understand how another user might use it in the future.
Right. What do you think about companies being more empathetic? Do you have any tips and tricks that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I think so. Right now, I do work in the pharmaceutical industry, which should be based on empathy, making sure that patients get these life-changing products, doctors understand their clinical benefits and can communicate it. And that sounds well and good and quite simple, but at least here in the US, that is quite complicated. And we try to be more empathetic by doing that, finding true patient groups, finding advocacy groups, having one-on-ones with doctors beyond maybe just conferences, but sitting in their offices, talking to their staff. That's how I've worked with companies in the past that have truly kind of taken that next step to empathy, because you certainly can, hear or assume one thing from an interview, but actually seeing someone, use a system or talk to a patient or even read a document really changes your perspective and gives you some deep insight into how that's used in the real world.
Right. You said it best. Though many companies have their heart in the right place, wanting to design great experiences for their customers, many efforts often fail to make like the real impact. What has been your experience in getting successful CX efforts off the ground?
No, absolutely. And just the idea of empathy is a big step for corporations, and understanding that, though we have an internal view of how something might work, it really matters on how the customers perceive it. So having that first step of teams and individuals and organizations that believe in true customer centricity is a step forward. But I found there's a couple pillars that need to be met, where sometimes companies only maybe have one or two, and then the whole entire experience isn't successful, and oftentimes that sets almost a bad taste for customer experience, which is unfortunate. I hear a lot of, no, we tried this and it didn't work, or we did that a couple years ago and I didn't see value. And that's because a couple of these key pillars I don't think were fully met.
Yes, you've mentioned pillars of successful customer experience. Would you like to touch upon that for our viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something I've put together over the years that I feel like if you meet these four categories, you set yourself up for great success. And those are contextual, meaningful, measurable, and executable. And by putting those things together, I'll dive into each one of those means. You can make sure you go from that empathetic heart to actual measurable success, which really is what matters in business. So from the contextual side, you really need, that's where the empathy comes in. These experiences need to be based not on just a functional need of visiting a website and making a purchase or learning more about a product, but it really needs to have an emotional component to understand, what is that person going through, where are they in their journey, and what is it that is a barrier to their success. Then as we move into meaningful, it has to be something beyond just profitable, right? That's something that, authenticity is something that's valued across industries, and it needs to be, CX focused measures needs to be deliver more than just, bottom line dollars to an organization. It really does need to mean something to both the internal team who believe in it, and the external facing customers who again are getting that kind of emotional and authentic connection.
Yes.
Executable, kind of self-explanatory. It's great to have strategies and ideas, but if you can't bring that to life, then unfortunately no one will get to experience it. So it's that balance of, what's right for the customer versus what can the market handle. And lastly, which is one of the most important and often overlooked portions of CX, is that idea of measurable. Measuring experiences is something that a lot of corporations struggle with, because it's not just one simple metric. It's more of a story of how do multiple things interact, and did we change behavior? Was that behavior positive for both the person who interacted with it? And at the end of the day, this is a business, so did it have a positive business impact? When I say, companies sometimes have their heart in the right place, you might get one or two of those four, but putting all four together really ensures value to both the business and the customer, and starts to build a culture of experience that transfers throughout all the employees.
Yes, you've very importantly mentioned that measuring CX is something that companies don't really look into. What, according to you, could be some of the metrics that we could track at a regular pace of time?
Yeah, I know. I'm a firm believer in, this is my own personal definition, but the difference between metrics and KPIs, and metrics are very diagnostic. They're easily measurable. What happened? Was there a click on a website? Did someone open an email? How long did someone stay on a website? But that in of itself, though important, is still very directional, right?
Mm-hmm.
The question behind that is why and what happened next. So I think companies can do a really great job of looking at those diagnostic metrics and then layering that against their customer journey and say, well, if someone opened our email, they went to our website, they interacted with 2 or 3 pieces of content, and then they requested to speak with a representative, then the story is like our ecosystem worked exactly how we wanted. That behavior is what we wanted to achieve. And then that needs to be measured and marked to say that person has moved forward in their journey. So what type of content are we sending them next? It shouldn't be awareness content. They're already engaged. So what's that next step in the journey? And really sort of prepare for what the customers know they want, but they don't know it yet. Kind of that predictive behavior works really well. And one, it's much more efficient. You're not sending the same thing over and over. And two, that really builds a great customer experience where someone interacts with you and goes, wow, like this company understands me. This content was relevant. And that starts to build that affinity and loyalty towards your brand.
Yes. What about organizational change? How is experiences kind of related to that? Or do you see some kind of fluctuation that happens here? Or what could be some steps that, to be taken that could be managed well here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, this is an overlooked aspect of customer experience. Customer experience shouldn't be solely a single department. Oftentimes, you deal with companies who are quite siloed, right? So you've got sales and marketing and IT and maybe a field force, and they're all kind of hyper focused on their tactics, but no one's kind of looking left and right and saying, how do customers interact with this? I like to tell a story of how, if you go to any sort of popular fast food chain, you don't drive up and say, oh, great, the land team really got a great location. And as you open the door, oh, the facilities team really did a nice job designing it. And the marketing team did a really good job on the menu boards. And the chef team did a really good job creating the menu. That's not how consumers interact with brands. They have one experience with a brand, and that goes horizontally. So that's where experience needs to come in and the organizational change needs to happen. Having CX focused people is excellent, but they need to have the ability and authority to kind of cross all of those pillars. And it needs to be kind of top down. You often hear of chief marketing officers talking about how we want to be more customer centric. We want to put more effort into customer experience, but it doesn't tend to trickle down because there's no one that the middle management is very focused on tactical execution, right? So if CX is too far downstream, they won't have full visibility into the entire experience, and they won't be able to connect those experiences, how actual consumers move through your system. So that takes quite a bit of organizational change for someone to say, we want to have a department that sits at a certain level, can kind of connect and observe all of our actions, and then sort of have the ability to interact with those teams and connect them so that it feels like a cohesive experience, because that's in the end what consumers want.
Right. You've designed experiences for a wide variety of industrial situations. I mean, from pharmaceutical to branding to banking and retail again. What is the number one rule or number one kind of advice you would like to give strategists to be more successful?
Yeah, hey, maybe it's an unpopular one, but at the end of the day, as a CX strategist, my opinion isn't the one that really matters, right? It's the opinion of the people we're here to serve. And often we talked about that true empathy. There's a disconnect. I can do tons of research. I can talk to people and I can sort of translate it. But at the end of the day, if the customer is asking for something, if a patient or a doctor or a manufacturer is truly asking for something, that's the opinion that really matters. And it's important to kind of, put your ego in check. CX is here as a servant of those, they design experiences for. And that's just a little bit different mindset to say, maybe it doesn't exactly align with what I think, but if multiple people are saying this is how we want it, it's kind of your duty as a CX strategist to bring that back to your organization and share that and enact it. And at the end of the day, you go back to the pillars and it's important to measure it. Maybe that was a small subset, maybe it didn't work, but it's really important to you kind of check your ego and listen to what you're being told, have that empathy, and then it's your responsibility to bring that back and act on it.
Yes, this is indeed a very fine piece of advice. Are there any other sound bites you'd like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited that customer experience is starting to become more mainstream. I think there's a lot of individuals who have always sort of done some of these exercises. I think there's a lot of companies who often struggle with how maybe CX is different from user experience, is different from market research. And I would say that they work together. Market research is excellent for solving specific problems, and that should be available to your customer experience team to say, well, how are these problems connected? How can we reuse this research in a way that's something new? And from a user experience perspective, again, CX and UX should be lockstep. You have customer experience really understanding the needs and the behaviors, and then user experience there to make sure those experiences actually deliver on that, are done in an accessible way, are up to standard, and then you can measure it. So I think we're right on the brink of CX really becoming a standard part of business, and I'm excited to be here and share that knowledge where I can with the group.
This is amazing. Your insights were really valuable. Thank you for giving us your time. This interview has really marked the importance of how empathy is playing a very important role in this ever-evolving customer experience kind of community. So thank you for sharing with us your insights.
Thank you, Kimberly. It was great to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. We'll be back again with a new episode and a brand new expert soon. So stay tuned and we'll see you around for the next one.